So friends, we will be starting today the discussion of the questions related to environment asked in UPSC 2021. This year again we will start with the discussion of trend of the questions this time, and one by one we will elaborate all the questions related to environment and ecology in UPSC Prelims. So if we look at the nature of the questions and the trend, again this year again we saw that there were about 19 questions which were related to environment and ecology. So this year the trend has been repeated again. For the last few years I have been consistently saying that this is an era of environment, ecology. A lot of changes have been happening in the environment and climate. So as a result, the focus of UPSC nowadays has increased to assess the candidate's understanding of climate change, environment and ecology, rather to see how much a person who is aspiring to be a civil servant is aware about his surroundings. So this year again we saw 19 questions, though this year the questions related to national parks or endangered species or critically endangered species were not there. But this year, yes, we saw the questions were having a kind of inclination towards understanding the conceptual clarity of the candidate. So conceptual clarity was the focus this time rather than knowledge of the candidate. So though knowledge was also tested, but conceptual clarity was the focus. So let's discuss the questions asked in UPSC Prelims 2021. If we see the 16th question, this is the first question which we see about environment is about R2 code of practices. What is R2 code of practices? It constitutes a tool. They have indicated that it is a tool available for promoting the adoption of. So first thing is environmentally responsible practices in electronics recycling industry. Number 2, ecological management of wetlands of international importance under the Ramsar Convention. C, sustainable practices in the cultivation of agricultural crops in the degraded lands. D, environmental impact assessment in the exploitation of natural resources. So if we look at these options, if a candidate has not read about R2 code of practices, can strike any of these options. Okay. By ruling out the options, we can easily say we have not seen sustainable practices agriculture, we have not seen code of practices related to agriculture or wetlands very soon. So the candidate may be generally confused between option A, recycling, and option D, EIA. But here we can see R stands for recycling. If we guess it, that in between the two, so one can go in favor of recycling, R2 code of practices. So yes, R2 stands for recycling, R stands for recycling, recycling code of practices in the electronics industry. These code of practices were launched in 2013. There is a clear paper and a document regarding these R2 code of practices since 2013, and whichever company or the manufacturer is following these R2 code of practices have certain advantages. He will be having additional advantages in increasing its market share as the upstream consumers of the electronic goods. They will also rely upon somebody who is following these code of practices. So upstream consumers or companies which are taking those electronic goods, they will also see whether they are purchasing the electronic goods from a company which is following R2 code of practices, as a result of which it is a responsible company which has got the concern towards the environment, concern towards recycling, and also the concerns about the quality of the products, whether they are refurbished or fresh products, how responsible the company is towards producing electronic goods. Similarly, the downstream or the actual consumer or the local consumer or the person who is buying those electronic goods is also aware that if the product which he has bought has passed certain time or certain stage, he will be approached by the company to get that product back as a replacement for the new one in a certain period. So, consumer as well as upstream consumers, that is big companies which are purchasing the products which are called upstream consumers, as well as the local customers, they both will rely on the companies which are following R2 code of practices. A certificate regarding R2 code of practices is granted to the companies which are actually complying with the guidelines of R2. Moving on to the next question, 17. Why there is a concern about the copper in smelting plants? If we look at this question, copper in smelting plants, they may release lethal quantities of carbon monoxide into the environment. They may release. How they will release lethal quantities? If copper smelting plants will release lethal quantities of carbon monoxide, it means it will lead to a lot of fatalities. No copper smelting plant would be existing. So, this is a wrong option. They may release certain quantities, but they may not be lethal. Every industry releases certain pollutants as a consumption of fossil fuels. So, carbon monoxide may be there, but to say that they may release lethal quantities of carbon monoxide is a wrong statement. Number 2, the copper slag can cause the leaching of heavy metals into the environment. Yes, copper slag contains of heavy metals like lead, nickel, cadmium, iron, various heavy metals are there, and they may, as a result of this industrial production of copper, they may cause leaching of these heavy metals from the copper ores. This leaching may cause groundwater contamination, through heavy metals. Groundwater contamination may be there. Number 3, they may release sulfur dioxide 7 as a pollutant. Yes, this is a correct statement. Sulfur pollution or sulfur dioxide pollution is a common feature of copper smelting plants. It is a well known thing that copper smelting plants, as a result of consumption of various products in the production of copper, they release a lot of sulfur dioxide. So, 2 and 3 seem to be the correct statement, and we will go with B as the correct answer. 17, B is the correct answer. Moving on to question 18. With reference to Fernand Oil, so this year the questions regarding industrial pollution have been asked. You can see these two questions were in relation to industrial pollution. R2, it was related to electronics industry, it was related to copper industry, and again we are saying a question related to oil, Fernand Oil. This is also a kind of industrial pollution. So, most of the questions are regarding industrial pollution. Fernand Oil. Fernand Oil is a byproduct of refineries. It is a product of oil refineries, correct statement. From elsewhere it will come. Yes, it has to be correct. Some industries use it to generate power. Definitely, some industries use it to generate power. It causes sulfur emissions into the environment. Yes, it causes sulfur emissions into the environment. So, all these three statements are correct. Fernand oil can be used to generate power. It is used in, it is a product of oil refineries, and yes, it is causing sulfur emissions into the environment. Okay, I wanted to mention this, that this is the book Environment Question Bank, which has been written by me. I am Dr. S. Niranjan. I have written this book, Environment Question Bank. It is basically a question bank, though the questions have been presented in such a manner that we have explained the options in much detail so as to cover the entire topic. So, this year again a lot of questions have been asked in this. For the last 3 years, we have been seeing a lot of questions out of this book. It is quite easy to finish. We have given 7 units here. First, we start with the current affairs. Second, then conceptual ecology, then biodiversity, environmental pollution, climate change, sustainable development, and then we conclude it with disaster management. So, it is a McGraw-Hill publication, and it has been a successful bestseller for the last 2 years. So, you can see many of the questions each year being asked from it. So, moving on to the next question, what is blue carbon? Blue carbon is basically the carbon dioxide which is sequestered into the oceans and the coastal region. Oceans and coastal region. We are talking about sequestration or carbon dioxide tapping. So, carbon capture which is happening in the ocean and the coastal ecosystems is called blue carbon. Blue carbon means a lot of carbon dioxide which is being produced or which is being released into the atmosphere. 50% of such carbon dioxide is tapped by the plants of the sea. Plants of the sea like phytoplanktons, that is microscopic photosynthetic creature, phytoplanktons and sea grasses, algae, etc. These are capturing a lot of carbon dioxide. I can say half of the carbon dioxide on this planet is captured by these phytoplanktons and other plants near the coastal regions and in the sea. Question 20, you can see, in the nature, which of the following is most likely to be found surviving on a surface without soil? So, you can see the question which is being asked, it is again a question from which is very well mentioned in my book, Environment Question Bank. So, they are talking basically about primary succession. What is primary succession? Primary succession means there is a bare area. If a bare area or a rock or volcanic lava is there. So, what is there? There is no soil. So, the first inhabitants of this place will come and lead to primary succession. Primary succession means sequential communities of plants and animals will keep on invading this area until it develops into a climax community, which may be a forest. So initially it is bare, no soil is there. So first plant creatures to invade this bare area will be what of these? Will it be a fern? Yes, fern requires soil, so it cannot be the fern. Moss requires formed soil, it cannot be moss. Mushroom is a fungi, but since the correct option 2 is not given along with 4, so 2 only can be considered to be the correct option. Mushroom also grow in humid areas which have got some soil. This is fungi plus algae association of fungi plus algae. Fungi are saprophytic creatures. They survive on dead organic matter, while these are accomplishing photosynthesis and manufacture their own food. They are able to synthesize food. So lichen is the most obvious answer, 2 only. B is the correct answer of question 20. 21. Which of the following is used in preparing a natural mosquito repellent? Nowadays it has been quite in news. Congress is not there, elephant is not there. Yes, lemongrass. Lemongrass is especially serves as a repellent to insects of Diptera family. Diptera means they can be repellent to mosquito as well as housefly. So they are very common in use these days. If we move on to question 22, they are asking about certain organisms. So if you have a little knowledge about the producer, consumers, the organism which can carry out photosynthesis, which cannot carry out photosynthesis, they are asking certain organisms from the basically aquatic habitat or oceanic creatures. Who are the producers of the ocean? Ocean में producers का काम जो करते हैं, we call them as phytoplanktons, that is microscopic, cellular or unicellular plants. These unicellular plants can do photosynthesis, that is they can synthesize their own food. They can carry out photosynthesis. These are called phytoplanktons. Here we very well know that cyanobacteria, which we also call as blue-green algae. We call them blue-green algae, but these cyanobacteria are prokaryotic creatures. But they are able to synthesize their food in the presence of light. Yes, diatoms. These are also microscopic plants. 2 and 3 both can manufacture food. While these copepods are crustaceans, you can say these are the cows of the sea. They are primary consumers and they survive on these cyanobacteria and diatoms. They consume diatoms and cyanobacteria for their nutrition. They are not primary producers, they are primary consumers. So no. Foraminifera, these are protists or unicellular amoebic creatures which also survive by engulfing other microscopic creatures, but they cannot synthesize their own food. So 4 is also wrong. So it little bit knowledge of classification and sorting, you can easily do this question. If you know 2 is correct, then easily you can go towards this. Yes, then whether I have to include 3 with 2 or 1 with 2? It is obvious answer is 2 and 3. So by ruling out you can easily do this. Consider the following animals: hedgehog, marmot, pangolin. Now they have written a statement after that. So we know that this pangolin has the tendency to curl up like a ball. Whenever it is confronted with any carnivore or a dangerous animal, it tends to curve up like a ball. So it is quite surprising and startling for its enemy. So it is obviously 3. But is hedgehog also doing the same thing? Hedgehog is a mammal, though both are mammals. Pangolin is also a mammal. Hedgehog is a mammal. It is insectivorous mammal. It has got spines on its body. So there is a tendency in the hedgehog also to roll its body. It has also got spines on its body. So it also rolls like a ball, and with its spine projecting like this. So it is also disturbing for its enemy, and enemy moves away. So it has a tendency to do this. So anybody who is having a little knowledge about hedgehog and pangolin can easily do these questions as D, 1 and 3. With reference to the New York Declaration on Forest, which of the following statements are correct? It was the first endorsed at United Nations Climate Summit 2014. It is a correct statement. Yes. And it was the first time when there was a global timeline to end the loss of forests. So loss of forest has to be curbed by 50% by 2020, and by 2030 there has to be a zero loss of forests from 2030 onwards. So it was kind of a global timeline in this New York Declaration on Forests. It is not legally binding, non-legally binding. It is clearly written that it is not legally binding international declaration, though it is endorsed by more than 150 governments. There are, I think, 30 governments and big companies and indigenous communities which have endorsed this. There is no non-legally binding, but there are commitments. Commitments have been given by the governments, big companies and indigenous communities. There is no mechanism to bind these people, so it is non-legally binding. This is a wrong statement. It is endorsed by governments, big companies and indigenous communities. India was not at the signatory, was not one of the signatory. So 1, 2 and 4, 1, 2 and 4, A is the correct answer to this question. If we move on to magnetite particles, so magnetite particles, it indicates the particulate matter, we mean particulate matter which has been magnetized. Particulate matter which is magnetized. It is also a question of understanding how you approach it. So particulate matter when magnetized is called magnetite. It is said that these magnetized particles are responsible for neurodegenerative problems like Alzheimer's and other diseases. So a role of these magnetized particles have been speculated. Environmental pollutants generated as environmental pollutants from which of the following? Brakes of the motor vehicles. The brake wear is one of the major source of generation of magnetite particles. To the extent of 20% of the magnetite particles are generated here. Since the tires are running on the road, there is a lot of wear and tear and there is high speed heat. So magnetization happens to the generation of heat. So brakes of the motor vehicle generate a lot of magnetite particulate matter which can lead to certain health hazards like neurodegenerative disorders. Engines of diesel exhaust vehicle especially, though engine exhaust of all motor vehicles produces magnetite particles, since heating is there and wear and tear is there, as a result of heat and wear tear, magnetite particles will also be generated in the engines of motor vehicles. Microwave stoves within a home, again the heat is there and certain utensils are kept, food particles are kept. So, microwave stoves will also definitely generate magnetite particles. And in lab, there have been various researches that in labs these home microwaves have been used effectively to generate magnetite particles. Power plants, obviously, coal-based power plants generate a lot of magnetite. Telephone lines, since there is a certain band of electromagnetic spectrum that is carrying those voices, there is heating and some generation of magnetite particle can be there. So, 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5, all of them can effectively generate magnetite particles. 26th question is, which is a filter feeder? Filter feeder means it can get a lot of food material mixed in water, it can throw the water out and capture the food material through its specialized structures in the oral cavity. So, which organism is like that? Catfish, we have not heard about it, that it is a filter feeder. Octopus, we know that it directly catches the prey through its arms. Pelican has got a beak which is pouched. So, it is said to be a dip feeder, but not a, it can catch a fish in this pouch, but it cannot be said to be a filter feeder. Oyster is a definite filter feeder. Its oral cavity has a ciliary lining. It is lined by certain hair-like projections which can easily trap the food particles and reject a lot of water which comes in its oral cavity with the current. So, it rejects waters, take food. So, as a result, it can be called a filter feeder. Definite filter feeder is oyster. C is the correct option. 26. In which of the following, one of the following biogeochemical cycles, the weathering of rocks is the main source of release of nutrient to enter the cycle. So, when we are talking about weathering of rock, so it means they want to talk about some sedimentary cycle. So, it is a very easy question. Somebody who is having a little knowledge of biogeochemical cycle either through geography or through the environment itself can very well know that gaseous cycles are nitrogen and carbon cycles, sedimentary cycles are sulfur and phosphorus cycles. They are called gaseous cycles because they have got a major atmospheric portion. Here we can see sulfur has a very minor atmospheric component, but we can surely say for phosphorus that it is entirely rock based, no atmospheric component present. कोई इसका there is no atmospheric component, इसमें कोई atmospheric component नहीं, it is entirely rock based. So, we can say weathering of rocks is equal to C, phosphorus cycle. 27th is C. Detrivores. Detrivores means those which are eating dead organic matter. By eating the dead organic matter, they tend to break the organic matter into organic and inorganic. The role is to solubilize the dead animals and plants. After solubilization, they can go back to the soil and enrich the soil in minerals as well as carbon. So here we can see earthworms. These are the friends of the farmers or the plowers. They are very well known as detrivores. Millipedes, yes, we know that. Wood lice, yes, we know that. These are solubilizing the dead organic matter. But jellyfish, we for sure know jellyfish preys. It has got a sting, kills its predators or the animals, or they can directly consume them. Seahorses are fish. They rely on smaller insects or other small fishes for their nutrition. They are not eating dead organic matter. So 1, 3 and 5, if we see, C is the correct answer to this question 28. So basically, they are working on the cycle of decomposition. So decomposition is breaking down the dead matter or solubilizing the dead organic matter. So what happens? This is quite dominant in the detritus food chains. Detritus food chains are common in terrestrial ecosystems and very prominent in, if we can give an example, we will surely give or surely talk about tropical rain forests. Tropical rain forests have got a very dominant detritus food chain, and we can find all kinds of detrivores there, which are earthworms, millipedes, wood lice, or many insects are there which are detrivores. So dead organic matter is quickly solubilized and recycled. The common carbon metric supported by UNEP. Common carbon metric is an initiative of United Nations Environment Program Sustainable Buildings Climate Initiative, SBCI. So you can see the first option, assessing the carbon footprint of building operations around the world. Yes, this happens to be the correct answer. So it is well known that building operations throughout the world are responsible for 1/3 of greenhouse gas emissions in some way or other. Moving on to question 30, which of the following have species that can establish symbiotic relationship with other organisms? Symbiosis, as we know, both the species benefit. Symbiotic association, when we are talking about biotic interactions in a community. Biotic interactions means interaction between one living organism and the other living organism, and that interaction is beneficial to both the organisms. So if we can find examples in cnidarians, yes, cnidarians means hydra-like creatures. Hydra-like creatures. So cnidarians have in their gastrovascular cavity certain microscopic algae, which are called zooxanthella. Zooxanthella are doing photosynthesis, producing food, and these cnidarians are getting a rich supply of food through this. Organisms are coming to this to eat food, and they are killed by their tentacles and food is consumed. So what happens, there is a zooxanthella is getting shelter inside this cnidarian. Another important example which I have given in my book is between sea anemone. Sea anemone is a cnidarian, and Euparegus. Euparegus is a hermit crab. Hermit crab. What happens? Crab has the ability to move from one place to another. But since hermit crab is quite tasty, it is vulnerable to predators. So what happens? On the carapace, of hermit crab, this sea anemone grows. So this crab or hermit crab is concealed by sea anemone, and sea anemone is carried from one place to another by the crab. So crab is getting protection, because it is concealed, and it is getting movement. Movement causes it to move to the fresher or newer avenues of feeding. So this is a correct answer. Fungi, we very well know the association between fungi and algae is called lichens. Algae are synthesizing food, fungi is getting food, fungi is helping in solubilizing the dead organic matter so that further lush growth of algae happens. Protozoa. Protozoa, one very good example of protozoa is termites. Termites, you know, very easily destroy the wood. How they destroy the wood? Has a good example in Symbiosis. The gut of the termites have a protozoa. Termite is an insect, all of you know. You have seen termite. It has got a protozoa called trichonymph. Trichonymph has ability to digest cellulose. Cellulose is the toughest component of wood. So what is happening? Trichonymph has been provided shelter in the gut of termite, this insect, and it is helping the termite to digest cellulose from the wood which is eaten by termites. So very good example in protozoa. So this 1, 2 and 3, D is the correct option of question number 30. Moving on to another question, 59. In the context of India's preparation for climate smart agriculture consists of the following statements. This climate smart agriculture is quite in news these days. Basically, it means that the agriculture in whatever region it is being carried out should be compatible with the climate of that region. That is called climate smart agriculture. We should grow the crops which are compatible or which are favorable in a particular climatic region. That is called climate smart agriculture. So the climate smart village approach in India is a part of project led by Climate Change Agriculture and Food Security CCAFS, an international research program. Yes, CCAFS is a international research program which is carried out by CGIAR, which is headquartered in France. Second statement, the project of CCAFS is carried out under Consultative Group on International Agriculture Research headquartered in France. Yes, it is headquartered in France. Consultative Group of International Agricultural Research is headquartered in France, but it has got 15 other research centers, and one of that prominent research center is International Crop Research Institute for Semi-Arid Tropics, ICRISAT, which is located in India. So all the three statements are correct since they are very large statements. So sometimes there is a chance of error. So 1, 2 and 3 all can be said to be correct.